This happened to me back in middle school. I had a pretty normal school life up until this. I got good grades for the most part, other than struggling in math. I made and had a lot of friends, as well as enemies, and had a fair share of teachers I enjoyed, and others I couldn't stand. Our middle school included 6th through 8th grade, and this started taking place my 7th grade year. We ended up getting a new science teacher that came from another state. She was pretty cool though, and pretty for that matter. She had long, dark hair that she usually kept down. If anything, she used a pen or pencil and twisted the hair around it to keep the sides from falling in her face, but that was it. Even when it was super hot or windy, she never changed it. She also always wore the same style skirts. My friends and I actually joked about her closet probably being filled with the exact skirt in like 20 different colors. She even seemed to have a few festive ones: Christmas, Easter, Valentine's, Halloween. I wonder now if she made them all since they were all identical. Anyways, other than her choice of style though, she was very nice and always clicked with the students. She was able to joke and tease with all of us. Even the so-called class clowns couldn't get her upset. She would always have a comeback and was able to get the class right back on track. Everyone seemed comfortable approaching her with questions about assignments or whatever we were learning too. All in all, she was just a normal teacher that wasn't uptight and treated us like humans. There was another reason why I particularly liked her though. I was a bookworm. Most of my free time, you could find me with a book in my face. I loved contests on how many books you can read within the year and things like that, and when she started working at my school, she asked if anyone would be interested in a book club. I was immediately all for it, as I realized we didn't have one at the school before, and of course, thought this was a great idea. When she hung up a sign-up sheet, she approached me after class and asked if I would be interested in being the spokesperson or the club leader since she could attest to how much I read. I again agreed. So after school, we got permission to hang out in the library and we brainstormed ideas on what books to choose from, when we should meet, and our goals for how much of the book we were supposed to have read, things like that. All in all, we had about a dozen people sign up for it, and most of them showed up. We read a few chapters, would meet up and discuss what we thought so far, what we thought was happening or supposed to happen, hidden meetings and significance, and so on. It was a lot of fun, and I actually got to know some students that I never talked to before, and some I didn't even know were interested in reading. Then there was the teacher. I started becoming closer to her as well. I found myself hanging out in her room after class and helping her with things like picking up or laying things out on the desks. She would even give me passes to my next class without getting in trouble or being counted as late or absent. People definitely had their share of jokes though. I'm a guy, so they would tease me about having a crush on her or something, but it was honestly never like that. I looked at her as a trusting adult, like a big sister or an aunt, which I only had a baby sister at the time and 2 aunts that I hardly knew, so I suppose it filled a gap there. Anyways, so middle school went as normal as I would expect for the time. Then there was one day I had to stay late for something unrelated to her or the book club. It was for some project that I was working on with the other people in my group. One of the teachers, or the librarian, told us that they were going to be locking up, so we had to leave. we were pretty much done at this point and were just goofing around, so I think they were just ready for us to leave so they could. Looking back, I feel like an ass, so if they were ever to see this, I apologize. So we all started heading out one by one. People were picked up or got on their bikes and left. I had told my mom I was going to be there till a certain time and to not pick me up around, say, 6 p.m. However, I did not plan this out very well. I didn't have a phone at the time, nor did I think about calling before we got locked out. So I was going to be waiting for about half an hour before she came and got me. So I just did what I did best and sat on the steps and read while I was waiting. In the midst of reading, a car stopped in front of me and someone hollered for me. It was this same teacher. She asked me what I was doing and told her I was waiting for my ride. She said she would take me home instead though if I wanted to. I declined and told her my mom would be there soon, so it wasn't a problem, and I thanked her for the offer. She then pushed it and said that it was supposed to storm soon and assured me it wasn't a problem since I lived close by. I knew that was true because my mom had mentioned it earlier that day, so I finally agreed and got in the car. I remember her car being really weird for the type of person she was. For being organized and clean, her car had trash everywhere. She threw stuff that was in the front seat to the back, which included an old dingy coat that, once again, I couldn't see her wearing. She also had her hair pulled up in a messy bun. She just seemed like a completely different person. It was a bit awkward being in a teacher's car, but thankfully I really did live close, so it didn't take long for me to get home. She pulled into our driveway, I thanked her, and she left. My parents had met her and the other teachers before, so they trusted her too, and understood why I would get a ride home from her. This would happen a few more times during the school year, and she actually started giving me a ride home when we had our book club. However, it was never not weird that her car was still a mess. It wasn't even a situation of she just hadn't cleaned it in a while and then just finally did, especially knowing she was giving someone a ride home at least once a week. It was always a mess, and there was always some weird clothing or trinket in it. I remember a jacket, some kind of colorful headband. There was a stuffed animal at one point, just weird little things like that. But as time went on, I got used to it and it stopped bothering me. But there was one time that I couldn't shake this feeling. I stayed late because of some project I had to do, and I needed to use the library encyclopedias, but I had forgotten that it was a holiday weekend and the school wasn't going to be open late today. So once again, I was left to wait for my ride. I was able to call my mom in the office though, but she didn't answer, so I left a message hoping she would see it soon so I wouldn't have to wait long. I went outside to wait when something put me on edge. I kept looking around to see if there was anyone or anything, but there was nothing. That's when the teacher pulled up in her car, as usual, asking if I needed a ride. She looked as she normally did this time though. Her hair was down, and as I approached her car, it was spotless. Something wasn't right. I suddenly started feeling sick to my stomach and declined her offer. She again insisted and said it wasn't a problem, but I told her I wasn't feeling well and didn't want to risk getting sick in her car. Thankfully, she agreed and said she would swing back by in an hour or so, and if I was still there, she would then take me home. So I agreed, and she left. After she was gone, the sick feeling went away, but I still felt uneasy. My mom arrived shortly after, and once I was home, I started feeling normal again. I had no idea what happened. She was there the next day too, so I could at least confirm she was okay, leaving me without any ideas. The weirdest thing to happen after that incident, though, was that she seemed to distance herself from me after that. She hardly talked to me or asked for my help after classes, and actually said that she wouldn't be able to give me rides home anymore due to other obligations she had. It wasn't a big deal since she was doing it to be nice anyways, but it was still just weird. I would see her drive by without even looking at me. There was one major event though that occurred that year. One of the students in my grade went missing. I don't really know them outside of one of the classes I had with them, but it was still a crazy time. Plenty of rumors and theories that went around, running away, kidnapping, hiding in plain sight, all kinds of things. I remember it being a really weird time, and some of the things people would say just seemed really harsh, and being an adult now with a kid of my own would make me furious to hear my kid being talked about like that. Anyways, he was never found by the time we finished the school year. We had our summer vacation filled with somber and mystery and returned to school the following year. This time, we were still missing a fellow student and a teacher. The teacher that we all seemed to become close to, the one that gave me rides home, wasn't there. Another teacher told us that she just quit, and we just moved on from there. The rest of the middle school was kind of weird. With the student never being found, it wasn't until high school that we would finally have some closure. My junior year, one day we were having class as normal when we noticed a lot of teachers seemed distracted, talking amongst themselves privately, and just all around seemed on edge. When I went home, I noticed my parents seemed to be doing the same thing, and thankfully, they had always been open with me and my sister. We sat down and talked, and they asked me if I remembered the student that went missing, and I confirmed. They explained that he had been found. Where had he been this whole time? With our old teacher. She was found several states over with a kid that looked malnourished. She had apparently been linked to the last person he was with, and they had been looking for her since. And as the rumors and talking went around at school, we were able to start piecing things together too. He got a ride from her, but instead of taking him home, they fled. I heard the cops searched her house and found other kids' belongings, so there may have been multiple, but there was never any information released on that. That got me thinking back to my experience with her. That one day she was going to give me that ride, and I was overwhelmed with anxiety and whatever else. Did I save myself from a bad situation? The fact that she avoided me afterwards, was it because she was suspicious of me too? And the weird things in her car, maybe those weren't even hers to begin with. We knew she came from a different state, so then there were also rumors about kids that had gone missing in the states she came from that were never found. It was a terrifying thought, and there were a lot of unanswered questions. My parents made a rule from then on, and that was that we were not allowed to go with anyone unless they approved it for each specific time. We weren't even allowed to go with my neighbors or even family members, people that my parents knew well and trusted, but I can't say I blame them. I would have never expected it from that teacher either. Thankfully, she's still incarcerated, and if she does ever get out, we can rest assured she will never teach again. So, I've been wanting to submit this for some time, but it still weighs heavy in my mind, so it's taken me a while to put it into words. I will say, I won't be too detailed, but it is a sensitive topic, so pre-warning for you and anyone who hears this. Anyways, this happened to me while I was in college. I wanted to go out of state to get out, to see what other states had to offer, and just be on my own. I thought it was a great idea for the longest time, too. I wasn't in a relationship at the time, and hadn't been in one in a while, and all my other friends had plans, so I wasn't worried about leaving anyone behind. Not that I didn't keep in contact anyways, because I did, of course, and usually went home during the holidays. My first year went as well as I expected. There were a lot of assignments, a lot of drama, and people breaking into dorms and pulling pranks. I tried to keep to myself, but that didn't last long. I had a few people that tried to get me involved in parties and things like that, which I would partake in at times. They were fun, for the most part. I've learned college students drink way too much. I did drink quite a bit, but I was always able to get home myself, without driving, of course. I was always afraid of getting drugged, so I always got my own drinks and kept a hold of mine. However, that didn't mean I didn't get a little wild at times. I believe it was for Mardi Gras. There was a huge party at someone's house, and someone invited me to it. Once there, I had a few drinks, sang some karaoke, and just hung out talking with people. Now, we're all adults, no matter how much some people didn't act like it, so we weren't doing anything wrong. These parties also tended to be open to anyone that may be walking by. That may also include the teachers. We had a few teachers show up and just hang out. We had a few that drank with us and shared hilarious stories about their past, and there may have even been the occasional hookups. Again, we were all adults, so it didn't really matter to any of us. That's kind of what got me in this mess. I had this teacher. He was our psychology teacher, Mr. Thompson, but I'll call him Quentin. It's less weird, I guess. He always seemed like a pretty chill guy. Easy to get along with, easy to talk to, and he was pleasing on the eyes too. He was a little older though. I don't remember the exact age, but I think late 30s or so. I always enjoyed talking to him though. He was kind and sincere, and a couple of my girlfriends I met there teased me that he definitely had a thing for me, so I guess that kind of stuck in my head too. I wasn't very good with taking hints or flirting, so I'm definitely not the type to initiate. If you ever meet me in real life, you might think I was stuck up, but I promise it's just my dumb brain. Anyways, who would show up to the party? Quentin. It was actually the first time I had seen him at one of these. He just came over and joined in on the conversation and started drinking with us. After a while, it started getting a little more hectic. People were getting creative with their drinks and their stunts, and when some of them started fighting, it was about time for me to go home. It was just going to be me, so Quentin offered to walk me home. Like I said, he was a nice guy, so when the flirting and compliments started, it wasn't hard to get him to come into the empty dorm. Yeah, so what you're thinking definitely happened. He left that night though, because technically, teachers probably shouldn't be sleeping in the dorms. The next time I had his class though, was a bit awkward. While it was consensual, the school still had rules, so it's not like we could outwardly be in a relationship. So, after class was over, he asked me to stay behind. He was still cool about everything, and he asked me how I was doing. After some awkward small talk, he got to the point. He said that he really wanted to have more with me, but couldn't risk his job for a relationship. I understood though, and we went on with our day. I thought I had a great time and will forever hold the secret, but apparently that's what he was counting on. It wasn't long after that he again asked me to stay behind. When I approached him, he immediately groped me and tried kissing me. That was definitely unexpected, so I didn't know what else to do but to kind of push him back and ask him what he was doing. We were in the school, so even if he changed his mind, that was not the place for it. He then said he couldn't afford a relationship, but he needed more. So back to his place we went. Afterwards, he made comments about how I was set for life, and to explain it quickly, he said I could do anything I want with my body. I was kind of thrown off by this comment because it was unlike him to be blunt like that. I understood more when we took a test in his class, and mine already had an A on it, but I hadn't taken it yet. He winked at me when I looked up and noticed it. This, though, I wasn't comfortable with. I wouldn't mind the relationship, but I didn't like it for an easy pass. As much as it might not seem like it at times, I took my classes seriously. So I talked to him afterwards and told him I didn't want any special perks from this, and I wanted to get the grades on my own. Surprisingly, he agreed though, so I thought that would just be left there. But no. Instead, I started getting worse grades. I did everything as normal, and we even saw each other occasionally outside of class, but yet I got a D on this assignment. When I confronted him about it, he then smiled and said, "Well, you want to earn your grade, right?" And he had this awful smile. I didn't understand because nothing had changed, but now I felt like I was being used. He then explained that he wanted something more. So, being naive and scared for my grades, I went to his house with him. He just wanted me to play out something. Sure enough, the previous assignment turned into an A. I confronted him again about this and said I wasn't okay with this. It turned into a fight, and I suggested that maybe we should forget anything ever happened and go back to how things were, but that's the first time I saw a different person, and it was terrifying. He told me that it was my fault this started, and if I wanted to pass, I would do what he wanted when he wanted. Thus began my struggles with myself and depression and trusting people. It was no longer something I enjoyed or even something I could have benefited from, but something I feared and felt obligated to do in order to pass this class. It was one of my favorite classes too, and I now despised it. He even took pictures at one point, using it as a means to blackmail me. I became withdrawn, and people took notice too. I was so afraid to tell anyone though, in fear that he would spread those photos or I would get expelled. There was a strong breakthrough for me though. I finally broke down one day to my sister, as I knew she wouldn't say anything unless I told her it was okay. She explained that I either needed to report it, as even if I got expelled, it was better than putting myself through this, but she felt due to the circumstances, I shouldn't be expelled. So instead, I confronted him and told him I was done, and if he tried to give me a bad grade because of it, I would report it to the admins. He wasn't fazed by this though, and the next day, there were photos of me. Granted, my face was not in it, but they were posted on the community board. It was humiliating and terrifying, looking around to see if anyone realized it was me. I felt I only had one option at that point, and that was to drop out. I didn't know what to do, so I just stopped going to class. However, he had my number, so he would still constantly call or text me, taunting me to come back and how much I would have to make up for missing assignments. Then he would randomly be walking around the dorms like he was looking for me. I started feeling closed in, so I moved out. The dorm was part of the tuition, so it was only a matter of time that I would be kicked out anyways, since I stopped making payments. Thankfully, I had a friend that lived off campus, and after explaining to her that some things came up and I wouldn't be able to attend class anymore, she agreed to let me stay there until I figured out what I was going to do next. I didn't stay there long because he was still close by, and I found out he was pestering my friends asking where I was. That then got them asking why he was specifically looking for me. The rumors started flying and things were pieced together, so I just went back home. I went back to live with my parents. My sister lived nearby, so she spent a lot of time with me, so I stayed out of my head. She also convinced me to at least tell my parents. Of course, they were confused and disappointed that I dropped out so suddenly, so I suppose it was only fair since I was living with them. They took it a lot better than I expected, though. My mother held me like a child again and comforted me, while my dad was the normal dad type and became furious. He wanted to contact the school, but I told him not to since it did start consensually. I just really wanted to move on. But to my surprise, while my parents promised to leave it alone, Quentin wouldn't. He managed to get my parents' contact information from what I assume was my emergency contact details through the school, and actually showed up at their house. My mom recognized him immediately and started yelling at him to leave. I wasn't home, thankfully, as I was with my sister, but my mom called us to tell us to stay at her place for a while until they were sure he wasn't around. I don't want to dwell on this too much, so I'll just say I couldn't avoid him forever. My parents and I had to file restraining orders just to keep him away. So, yeah, this has really caused a lot of trauma for myself. I never went back to school until last year. I did online classes, and I'm now working on having the life and career I wanted. I'm also seeing someone now, and I am incredibly thankful for their patience and kindness with my weird habits. I just have to take it one day at a time. I hope he's not a teacher anymore, but since he's not afraid to go across the country, I would suggest avoiding any teachers named Quentin Thompson and do your own schoolwork. I have a short but kind of creepy story that happened to me a while back when I worked as a waitress at a bar and grill. It's probably not the scariest thing, but it was definitely creepy to me, and I'm glad that it ended how it did. So, like I mentioned, I was a waitress for a restaurant that most people are aware of and have probably been to. I don't know if I should say the name of it, so I won't say it by name. I've worked there for several years at this point, and even worked through COVID, so I've seen my share of weird stuff. But this specific situation was one that genuinely freaked me out. This happened around the time when restaurants started opening back up after the pandemic. So business was pretty slow, with the exception of to-go orders. I had been assigned a few tables and was one of two people that were working as waitstaff that day. Most of the day, I was just cleaning up the store and helping out the to-go section. I was in the middle of bagging an order when the greeter came over to me and mentioned that I had a seat that I needed to take care of. I thanked her and walked over to the table, only to be surprised by who it was. It was actually one of my high school math teachers. I happily said hi to him and asked how he was, and he seemed to be just as happy and excited to see me. I thought it was kind of neat seeing a teacher after having been out of high school for like 7 years, so I was getting pretty friendly with my conversation with him, telling him what I've been doing, how I've managed for the past few years, and all that. He then asked me if I was still with James, who was my boyfriend through the entirety of high school. I told him that I wasn't, that he moved away from the state for school, and we decided to just go our separate directions. He frowned and said, "Aw, that's sad, but it's good to know that you're doing okay. Are you single or seeing anyone?" Which was a bit odd, but at the same time, he had asked about my ex, so it also made sense as to why he would ask. I told him that I was single at the moment and just enjoying my time for myself. He laughed and then followed that up with, "You'll find someone. You know, I always thought you were pretty attractive while you were in my classes. I'm surprised you didn't have the guys all over you, to be honest." Which was not something I expected to hear from him, especially considering the fact that while I was in his classes, I was a minor. I just kind of smiled and said thanks, and then shifted the attention to asking what I could get for him. He asked for a glass of water and then mentioned that he was going to need a bit to decide what he wanted. I said okay and then went off and got him his water. I put it on the table and then told him that I would be right back in a few moments to get his order or answer any questions. I then walked away from his table and I needed to use the restroom. I went in and got in the stall to do my business. While I was there, I heard someone else walk into the restroom and then walk past my stall and into the stall at the end. I then finished and went to wash my hands, and as soon as I exited the stall, I heard the door open. It was my general manager. She stood in the doorway and told me that she needed to see me in her office for a moment. So I told her that I would be right there as soon as I washed my hands, and she told me that I could wash my hands in the back and that I needed to come with her. Obviously, I was a bit taken aback, honestly thinking I was just about to get fired, so I told her okay and just immediately went with her. As soon as we got back to the kitchen area, my manager asked me if I hadn't noticed what was going on. I told her that I didn't know what she was talking about and asked if I did something wrong. She then tells me that a few moments after I walked into the restroom, she watched that customer that I had been chatting with walk back and go into the women's restroom. She said that she was a bit concerned, so she wanted to check on me, and then when she opened the door, she saw his feet under the door, like he was just standing there at the door of the stall and waiting, which is why she was telling me to just come out with her. Obviously, I was a bit freaked out. What the hell was he doing following me into the restroom, and what were his intentions? After talking about it, she said that she would go ask him to leave so I didn't have to, and we both went to where the back met the front, and sure enough, he was gone. She went to check the restroom and he wasn't there either. We both assumed that he realized he was caught and then left out the side door in a panic. This whole situation really scared me. His statement was a bit creepy, but I never would have expected him to follow me into the restroom, nor would I have ever expected him to be such a creep. I'm beyond thankful that my manager was paying attention and saw him follow me, because had she not, I can only imagine what he could or would have done to me. So that, my friends, was a collection of creepy teacher stories, our first one for the channel. And I'm thankful I haven't had to experience anything like that. For the most part, as far as I can remember, I think I enjoyed a majority of my teachers. I think there were a few in high school that I just could do without, but I guess there's a couple of them. I don't know. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video, please do give it a like below. And if you'd like to hear more content like this, consider subscribing. And lastly, don't forget to leave a comment on your thoughts or let me know, did you have a creepy teacher? Or maybe even a better teacher, maybe a teacher that you like to remember. I'd love to hear about it. And with that being said, friends, I hope you have a fantastic week. And until next time, take care.